registration day. Welcome to Your Vote, Your Voice 2020. Are you registered? Co-hosted by the Center for Equity, Justice, and the Human Spirit, the Collegiate 100, and Engaging New Voices and Voters, a nonpartisan coalition. My name is Dr. David Robinson Morris, and I'm the founding director of the Center for Equity, Justice, and the Human Spirit. And along with Reverend Mitchell Stevens, Interfaith Chaplain in the Office of Campus Ministry, we will serve as your moderators. And Xavier student Chloe Smith will serve as the Q&A facilitator for this morning's very important panel, which seeks to make certain that you are registered and ready to vote in this most important election. Before we get into it, we'll begin, as we begin all in-person center events, with the center's SIFA, or Song of Praise and Intention, read by Reverend Stevens.
Good morning. Please join me as we give reverence and praise to our Creator. As we journey toward inclusive excellence, may we uphold the dignity of all human beings, work in every occasion to seek greater understanding, and practice love, deep and difficult, during our time together. We welcome all and extend to one another grace unmerited. May we always remember the giants of those shoulders we stand, the ancestors who have gone before us and dreamed us into being. May we be ever inspired by their courage and reminded that service is more important than success. Community is more important than narrow self-interest. People are more important than possessions, and principle more important than power. May whatever we do and who we endeavor to become be shaped by a commitment to equity, justice, and uplifting the human spirit. May we use our knowledge to work with and for the community to disrupt systems of oppression and to uplift the human spirit wherever we find it diminished. May equity be our aim and justice our guiding virtue. May we and our children and our children's children carry forth with pride the tradition of excellence, social justice, and collective actions with patient trust. To the Creator, the Great Spirit that speaks us into being, we thank you and call you to enter where you already abide. When our work together is complete, at peace, we will rise with purpose, fearing nothing. We press forward. May the ancestors guide us, and Saint Catherine Drexel pray for us. Ashe.
Ashe. Thank you, Reverend Stevens. Before we begin the panel, let me tell you a bit about the center, or as I like to say, let me pay the bills. The Center for Equity, Justice, and the Human Spirit was founded in August of 2018 as a response to our calling as the nation's only Black and Catholic institution of higher learning, and just one way that we at Xavier can put our knowledge into practice toward the creation of a more just and humane society. Focusing our efforts on crystallizing community, research, and activism within the areas of educational equity, criminal justice reform, and environmental justice, the center serves as a present point of intersection that brings together 95 years of our history at Xavier, working to combat and dismantle oppressive systems, triumphing in the face of adversity, reclaiming our shared humanity, and educating human beings who go out into the world ready to do justice always and in all ways. Today's panel is just another glimpse of what we attempt to do to inform and galvanize while impacting policy, changing practice, and most especially uplifting the human spirit. Our panelists today are Joy Braun. Joy is an organizer with Engaging New Voices and Voters and serves as the chair of Touro Synagogue's Social Justice Voting Rights Initiative. Next, we have Kalita Lloyd, director of the Together Louisiana's Precinct Organizing Project. And finally, we have Dr. Silas Lee, who will join us a bit later. Dr. Lee is a sociology professor in the Division of Social and Behavioral Sciences at Xavier and founder of Dr. Silas Lee and Associates. You did not come here to listen to me talk any longer, and so I will turn the floor over now to Joy and Kalita. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and I want to thank the Center for inviting my participation in this panel, and I have great respect for what this center, its mission, and all it has done, and I enjoy very much always working with Kalita and the wonderful work that Together Louisiana, Together New Orleans does. So Engaging New Voices and Voters, as was mentioned, is a nonprofit coalition that includes many organizations such as the Lower Ninth Voters Coalition, Jeremiah Group, the NAACP, Urban League, Hadassah, 100 Black Women, Touro Synagogue, Voice of the Experienced, and others. And we are available to all of the participants on this call on an individual basis. And we are going to very shortly and forthwith start going through a slide deck that has a lot of dense information about the mechanics of registering to vote. And I just wanted to say in advance for those participants that the slide deck will be available for distribution. So what I hope to accomplish today is to go through these in preview fashion, and then each of you will have an opportunity to spend more time, and you will also be given my personal contact information, and I welcome contact calls, whether by call, by email, by text, to assist anyone who wants further individual assistance in completing their voter registration. Karen, can we go to slide 1, please?
As Karen brings up the slides, I want to remind you, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A box, and we're happy to ask those for you.
Can we go to slide 1, Karen? There we go. Okay, and so I promised you some dense information, and it doesn't get any more dense than this. But starting at the top, your voice, your vote, use it. It's powerful, it's important, and here in a one-pager is information that we believe is helpful, sort of the nuts and bolts of what you need to know to register to vote, important dates for the November 3 election upcoming, information about voting by mail, information about voting in person, the GoVote app icon that we will talk about a little more in just a minute, a scan code for those of you who are accustomed to using those codes, and then a color-coded shot of the Secretary of State's voting and elections menu. Next slide, please. So let's get registered. We're going to first talk about online registration for Louisiana. We are nearing the end of the registration period. The election is coming upon us very quickly, but it's not too late to register to vote. The most expeditious way to do that, the quickest way to do it, and get on the polls so that you have potentially an opportunity to take advantage of the early voting period, is to register online. But in order to do that, you have to have a Louisiana driver's license or a Louisiana issued state ID card. And the reason is on those cards, there is a 4-digit audit code that most of us probably never knew existed, but I will tell you that it's there, and it's sort of in the area where your eye color is listed. So that's where you'll find your 4-digit code. If you have one of those, you can register online. These are some of the eligibility criteria. I don't need to read them to you. Important to know the deadline. So for registration online, it is up to a 20-day processing period. So the Registrar of Voters allows itself or herself, in the case of Orleans Parish, 20 days in order to process your registration application. So if you are planning to vote on election day, that is on November 3rd, you must count back 20 days to be assured of being on the rolls by election day. It is possible that you will make it to the rolls in less than 20 days, and we're going to talk about in just a minute how to check on various apps or online whether or not you are a registered voter, and then therefore you could vote at any time, including early, which period is now extended as of last week, beginning on October 16 through October 27. There is a second option to vote online, in addition to govote.com, which is frankly the easiest way to go. The govote.com website is actually the Secretary of State's website, but straight into his voting portion of his website. So govote.com. There's also a GoVote app, and the icon is pictured on this slide, which you can download to your mobile phone. If you choose to use the app, you will see a menu that comes up that will take you to the Secretary of State's website, so you end up back at govote.com. Next slide, please. All right, so the next series of slides, and I don't expect everyone or anyone to be able to read through all of this during this brief presentation. But as I said, I wanted to preview for you what will be made available to each of you. And these are a series of screenshots that take you through the govote.com homepage, and then how you progress and the menu selections that you make in order to get you to your voter registration application. So you go to the govote.com site, brings you to this screen, you select register to vote, which is highlighted in the red box. That takes you to the next screen, and again, the selection that you make is highlighted for you in the red box. Next slide, please. From there, you get to a screen that looks like what we see here on the left-hand side of the screen, step number 4. Again, your selection is highlighted in the red box, and then you get to the screen that is pictured on the right-hand side, where you click register to vote. Next slide, please. And I should say that once you get to the actual application, you're going to get a series of screens, and it's I think pretty user friendly. You just fill in the information that they ask for and then hit next or continue, and you just take yourself through the completion of the application and hit submit. Wait 10 to 15 days, and then check on your voter registration status, again, at the govote.com site or the GoVote app, whichever is your preference. What if online isn't possible? So as I mentioned earlier, in order to take advantage of the online application process, you have to have an ID card, a Louisiana state issued card that has that audit number on it. If you don't have it, no worries. You can complete a paper application. The paper applications are available to be downloaded. And if you want to get in touch with me, any individuals, through my contact information that will be provided, I will make sure that you get a paper application form. We can even have some delivered to the university if that would be helpful, so that they can be available there. The one that is pictured on your screen on the right-hand side is highlighted for your ease of use, so that you can quickly zero in on those aspects of the form, those bits and pieces of information that is required, that is mandatory in order for the Registrar of Voters to process your application. So there are a few things on here. For example, party affiliation, not required. A good thing to include, because it is necessary to be affiliated with a party if you want to vote in a presidential preference primary, for example, but not required on the form. So for those of you who are going to register using the paper application, you have now a highlighted template that you can use to assist you to make sure that you have included all of the information that Registrar of Voters will require. Next slide, please. There is an opportunity now to request an absentee ballot based on expanded COVID-19 reasons. I know that voter safety and the health concerns that we are all, that's weighing heavily on all of us right now, is top of mind. What do I need to do? What are my options so as to minimize my risks of contracting the disease, but not compromising in any way my right to vote? Both super important to all of us. So after a lot of drama, for those who have followed it in the news, we now, by virtue of a federal court ruling by a federal judge in Baton Rouge, we are able to take advantage of a temporary emergency COVID-19 expanded vote by mail eligibility. And so on the govote.com website, when you study the menu of options, there will be a place where you can click vote by mail, and that will allow you to request an absentee ballot. If you are a senior citizen, if you are disabled, 1 through 6 and number 8 are traditional reasons that would be persons who would be eligible to vote by mail. Number 7, affected by COVID, is the temporary newly added reason. And so if you click that, and next screen, please. If you click that, you will see the various ways in which to get yourself to the special application for COVID-19. And again, it's the govote.com site, and we have highlighted for you with the red and the green boxes to help draw your attention to how to obtain the temporary special COVID-19 mail-in ballot. And there are 2 ways to request that ballot. Number 1, and I'm looking now at the screenshot on the right-hand side of your screen. Number 1, and the one that I would recommend, is to apply online. And that will be quicker. Time is of the essence, as I've said a couple of times already. And so if you have that audit code and you are able to apply online for your COVID-related mail-in ballot, please note what is highlighted for you in the red box. For those people who do not have the audit code, you can still receive a mail-in ballot, but you're gonna have to print the application, complete it, and send it in or drop it off. And so it builds in a little extra time, and so you'd wanna hop on that as quickly as you can. Next slide, please. Want to just bring to everyone's attention some of the additional functionality on the govote.com site. In addition to registering to vote, here's applying for a mail-in ballot, and then additionally you can put in your name and find various other bits and pieces of information on this site. This screen is more about receiving the COVID-19 ballot, and for those people who believe they may be eligible and they are interested in voting by mail, please study these screens, and if you have questions, feel free to ask. Next screen, please. As you bring up the govote.com website, you will note that in red, you will see view sample ballot and polling location. If you click on that view sample ballot and polling location link, it will take you to the screen that says search by voter. If you click on search by voter, you will get the screen we have numbered, number 4, fill in required information. And the reason that this is helpful, many reasons actually that it is helpful, is if you fill in your required information, and obviously this is after you have completed your registration process. You put in your first name, your last name, your zip code, your date of birth, and you also have an option to select other information, personal identifying information. Then you hit submit. You will quickly determine if your registration is completed, if the Registrar of Voters has put you on the rolls. And as soon as you see your name come up on the next screen, you know you are able to go vote. You can also use this to find your ballot. And I will say, and Kalita may go into this in more detail, the ballot for this election, the November 3 election, is very long. It's got not only the presidential race, it's got a U.S. Senate race. It has other statewide elections. In Orleans Parish, we are electing a Supreme Court justice for the Louisiana Supreme Court. We are electing many judges, a DA's race. There are, I believe, Kalita, I think 7 constitutional, state constitutional amendments. There is a lot on this ballot, and under Louisiana law, each voter is supposed to complete their ballot if you are in the voting booth within 3 minutes. That is a tall task, a very tall task this time. So all the more reason to use these resources that we are providing to you. Put in your name and your zip code, your date of birth, bring up your specific ballot, study it, understand it. And if you download the Go Vote app on your phone, you also have the opportunity to complete your ballot, which then allows you to do it from the comfort of your home with all of the resources that you want to study up on how you want to vote. And then you can bring your phone with you into the voting booth and transfer your selections from the app directly onto your official ballot. The other important, or another important thing that you can find with these quick links after you have put in your specific, unique identifying information is your polling place. And that is very important for this election, more so than others, because as some of you know, if you voted this summer, there are traditional polling locations, places where you and I, and I'm sure many participants on this call, have traditionally voted for years and years and years, but they may be senior centers, or they may be schools that are not available as polling places right now during our COVID-19 pandemic. And so it is possible that your polling place may be different than where you are accustomed to going. On this site, you can confirm where it is, if you choose to vote on election day, where you need to go to vote. Next slide, please. All right, this is just to give you a bit of a preview as to what that Go Vote app that I've mentioned several times and that is pictured on the right-hand side of your screen with the scan code, what it looks like when you open it up. And you can see that the home screen allows you to search by voter, to search by address. After the election, you can pull up election results. If you are searching by voter, this is a screen that looks similar to the screen that we just saw on the govote.com website, where you can put in your information, confirm that your registration has been processed and that you are on the rolls. And by the way, let me suggest that even if you have already registered, whether it's within the recent past or the distant past, it is not a bad idea to just pop on either the govote.com website or on this app to just confirm that somehow, for some reason, you haven't been removed from the rolls. Make sure you're there while you still have time to fix it and protect your right to vote. The third screen that you see going from left to right has a menu that includes many of the things that we've just described: polling locations, my ballot, that's where you go to see what's on your ballot. And if you choose sort of pre-mark, what are your voting choices, and then a list of other menu options. This is the GoVote app. Downloadable for free, whether you've got an iPhone or an Android. Both platforms will support the GoVote app. Next screen, please. I know that Khalida is going to talk about ways to get informed and perhaps highlight a few specific things that are going to be on the ballot. But at least for Orleans Parish voters and others outside of Orleans Parish, these are a few websites where candidates, for example, League of Women Voters, collects responses from the candidates in all races in Orleans Parish. And so highly recommend that voters go to this website in order to become better informed about both biographical information of various candidates and also their attitudes on certain issues that are important to you. BGR, PAR, Spread the Vote are all sites that will assist voters in getting to know more about what's on the ballot and trying to figure out what choices they want to make to best align with their own points of view. Next slide, please. If you decide to vote in person, in other words, not a mail-in ballot, but voting in person, please remember that you have to bring with you a picture ID with a signature. So for college students, even though your college ID may have your picture, if it doesn't also have your signature, it will not be counted as a valid form of identification for purposes of casting your vote in person. Here are some other bits and pieces of information. I will quickly say that if for some reason you show up to vote in person, whether it's during the expanded early voting opportunity or it is on election day, and for some reason you don't have or you forgot to bring your picture ID with a signature, there are workarounds. Ask for the head poll commissioner who is assigned to your polling place, and they will assist you in both confirming that you are at the right place, and if so, executing an affidavit where you attest to the fact that you are who you say you are, and then you will be able to vote a regular ballot. Worst comes to worst and you're not in the right place, or for some reason you are not on the rolls and you believe that you should be, and you can't bring yourself up on that GoVote app to show the commissioners, here I am, then you are entitled to complete what is known as a provisional ballot, which is like every vote that you cast, confidential and put into a sealed envelope, but put aside until further study can be done to verify that you are in fact an eligible and registered voter. Next slide.
So we have a few more minutes. There's a question coming in from Miss Joyce Thomas. And she asks, if you physically forget your ID, if you take a photo of it beforehand and have it on your phone, is that an acceptable form of identification?
I think if you have a photo of your picture ID with a signature on it, I believe that, I can't say this with 100% certainty, maybe others know the answer to this. I believe that that should suffice, but worst comes to worst, get the head poll commissioner at your location and see whether that head poll commissioner will accept it, and if not, ask for your affidavit in order to attest that you are who you say you are, and then you will be permitted to cast a regular ballot. Next slide, please. I think that others will probably talk more, and Kalita in particular, I believe, is going to talk some about voter protection and knowing your rights. I will say to you that there is on the Secretary of State's website, in the menu that comes up on the left-hand side, a menu item called Frequently Asked Questions. And if you click on that, there is a drop-down menu with lots of information, including what are your rights as a voter. And so not a bad idea to be informed about that in advance. But this slide will provide at least one place where you can go if you observe something that doesn't look quite right, or if you believe that you are having your voting rights tampered with, interfered with, obstructed. This is a place where you can go to report your concerns, and there will be people available, a rapid response team to address those concerns on the spot. Next slide, please. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but know that in this slide deck that will be provided, there is information and resources for those people who want to register in a state other than Louisiana. These two sites, campusvoteproject.org and bestcolleges.com, have information that is state specific, both in terms of deadlines and the process for registering to vote and actually voting in a state not Louisiana. Next slide, please. So for follow-up questions, ENVV is eager to help each and every person complete their voter registration form and address their questions. My email address and mobile phone number will be provided in the slide deck that is going to be distributed. And my friend and colleague, Jill Israel, has volunteered her contact information as well. And you see here, thirdly, the ENVV website and email address, which is available. And I will say to you just a couple of things in closing before I turn it over. On the ENVV website, there are a number of shareable, downloadable bits and pieces of information for people to use to post to their social media platforms to encourage their friends and their colleagues and their neighbors to register to vote and to get out to vote. There are also some fun, quick YouTube videos of Saints players and Pelicans players who were given the prompt, I vote because, and they're very cool, and we're very grateful. And in closing, I'm going to say, watch your news coming up, because as you all know, not only has there been a lot of attention to the early voting period, which we highly, highly encourage people who can take advantage of it to take advantage of it, but we are reasonably optimistic that in the very near future, there will be information about a brand new early voting venue. So please be looking out for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy.
Okay,
Go ahead, Kalita. It's all yours.
yeah, I'm just going to keep going because I want to be mindful of your time, and I've got some really good information to share with you. I know Joy just gave you some really solid information that's very important, but I want you to translate from registering to vote to actually voting. I want to give you a little framework of why I'm going to be very emphatic about this work. Is what happened in 2016 for the presidential election is that people literally sat down and did not go vote. And so we already had people who were registered to vote, and they did not go and vote. Traditionally, when we have elections all across Louisiana, and we are an election state, we got election a couple times every year, there is a low voter turnout. And low voter turnout means about 30%, maybe even less than that, will turn out to vote. So that means 30% of people who are already registered to vote are coming to vote. And so you have about 70% and higher who are not showing up to cast a vote. And so the emphasis I love is that it's on registering people to vote, but I want us to be even more emphatic on getting people to the polls and getting people to vote. And so that is your civic duty, right? That is your initiative to be able to say, okay, I'm registered to vote now, and now I'm going to translate that to a vote. And then what I'll invite you to now is that not only is it your civic duty for you to go vote, it's your civic duty also to get other people to go and vote. And so this is the work that I'm leading with the Precinct Organizing Project with Together Louisiana. We are on a mission to increase voter turnout. And what that means is if we have a population of people whose voices are not heard, there is not democracy. And so we have to be encouraged. We have to use all of our energy, our capacity to increase that voter turnout. And this is what the Precinct Organizing Project allows us to do. And so I'm going to briefly share my screen just to give you some pictures of what I'm saying, because I think people listen a little bit more when there's pictures with what people are saying, but I'm going to go through these very quickly just to give you the emphasis, because what I'm about to share with you is some action-oriented work. I want you to leave here excited, energized about voting, and not only voting, but getting other people to vote. And so I'm leading the Precinct Organizing Project with Together Louisiana, and it's simply neighbors organizing their neighbors to increase voter turnout. We have different principles that we're guiding this, and part of it is going back to a neighborhood level infrastructure for elections. And so we're going to have block captains, precinct captains, and ward captains, and I'm going to ask you all today to become a block captain and to make sure that you are organizing your neighborhood, not only to increase voter turnout, but in order to increase power within your neighborhood as we make elected officials accountable. The other part of this project is that we want this structure to be accountable to ourselves as people of this community, of this city, of this state, and not accountable to political parties or any other candidates, as has been in the past. And so this is a citizen-led initiative where it only works if we work with it. Also, we know that we're going to raise money independent of it because we don't want to be beholden to any political party or any campaign. And so the Precinct Organizing Project is a nonpartisan effort, but very strategic nonpartisan effort in the work that we do in order to build that power and to keep elected officials accountable. And so what we're going to be doing is identifying and training 3,000 block captains all across the state, all across precincts, all across the state. And so we have just recently passed that 1,000 mark of block captains. So get excited about that. I can't see y'all, but get excited about that. And so we want to get as close, if not to that 3,000 mark statewide. So we want to have representation in every precinct in order to encourage people to get out to vote. Also, the Precinct Organizing Project is going to be able to support block captains to increase voter turnout and to build power in their neighborhoods. And so what it entails to be a block captain is you are going to be responsible for 10 other households within your neighborhood to get them out to vote. And so this is going to be an opportunity for you to build relationships, to engage with people. People don't vote just because they want to sit on their laurels or not be engaged with what's happening in their lives. People don't vote because there's not relational connection. And so if I'm someone who's encouraging someone else to vote, I'm gonna go vote. Or that person's going to go vote because I'm encouraging them. I'm letting them become informed about what's on the ballot and getting them engaged. And so what does it look like for neighborhoods to have that sense of energy around each other to increase voter turnout, not just in November, but elections beyond? And so we're working on this initiative in order to do great things and make a greater impact, because the more block captains that we have, the greater 10 households that we're going to be able to impact. And so we want you to be able to help us to go through what it means. And so part of what it means to be a block captain is this month right now, we're recruiting more block captains. And so we want you all to be a part of that. We want everyone on this webinar to sign up to be a block captain. We also want you to not only sign up other people, sign up yourself, but sign up other people in order to increase that impact and to grow that power, what we need. The other phase is going to be first contact, initial contact with people. The third phase is going to be early voting. We're going to encourage early voting and voting by mail because a vote in is a vote in, right? And so we want to make sure that people are able to cast their votes. We want people to be able to know that their vote is in. And so early voting and voting by mail is what we're going to be encouraging. Also, phase 4 is going to be, of course, election day. And so all the people who you didn't get to vote early or vote by mail, you're going to be responsible then to say, hey, 10 people on my list that did not vote early or vote by mail, today is election day, make sure you go out and vote. And then at the last phase, we're going to celebrate our increased voter turnout across precincts all across the state, because we know we're going to be able to make that impact. And then we're going to prepare for the runoff election, and we're going to do it all over again based on our results and our celebration. And so what I want to leave with you today, and I hope we get a chance to answer any questions that people may have, is we need you to become a block captain. Not only do we need you to be responsible for you registering yourself to vote, registering others to vote, and also you yourself going to vote, we also need you to be responsible for getting other people to be involved in voting. And so this is not for everybody, but for those who want to know that voting is our power, because it is, know that voting is our voice, because it is, and want to get other people involved and encouraged about voting, this is a way to get involved and to do that. And so go to togetherla.org/block captain to sign up today and help us to move that number surpassing 1,000 closer to 3,000 so that we can impact more households and increase this voter turnout all across Louisiana. Another part of the action steps that I want you to be able to do is we have citizens phone banking. And so in this world of virtual, everything is going to be done virtually. We are not encouraging anyone to go and knock on doors. Yes, knocking on doors is an effective way to engage in getting out the vote, but we are in a world of COVID. And so we are conscious of that, and we're letting people to do whatever is in their comfort level and to engage in that way. And so we've been Zooming on Zoom, doing phone banks called Citizens Phone Banks in order to help recruit more block captains. And so if you've got an hour, if you've got 2 hours to just be a part of this energy that we're building and to make phone calls to people to ask them to be block captains during this time, we've had 3 other ones planned. I'll put the dates up, and you can go to togetherla.org Citizen Phone Bank to register for those as well. And then I'm going to drop in the chat a promo video so that you can share, and we're giving you some tools here to ask people to be block captains and to engage in that way. And so these phone banks are coming up. They're going to be one on Wednesday. There's going to be one that's coming up coming Saturday. And oop, I lost it. Oh, there it is. This upcoming Saturday and then Monday as well. And so these are opportunities for, if you have time, to be able to help recruit and help us to make a great impact. October 1st is our official launch day, is when block captains all across the state are going to get their marching orders and get engaged with their 10 households to help increase voter turnout. And so during this time, we want to increase the number of block captains. And so I'm really thankful, David, for this time that the center has given for us to just share about the importance of your vote and your voice, and not only what your vote can do, but how you can impact other people to increase voter turnout all across the state of Louisiana. There's some other information that I would love to share with you. The ballot is very heavy this year. And one of those things that Together Louisiana does is it does take on policy issues and to help organize and build community around specific issues. We are going to be taking a stand on one particular constitutional amendment, and that's Constitutional Amendment number 5. And so we'll have information about that, but just so that you know, you're going to go no on Constitutional Amendment 5. And the reason for that is it's a corporate welfare tax. In a nutshell, it's giving opportunities for corporations in Louisiana to be tax exempt in many different ways that have no connections to creating jobs, no connections to building the economy that they are deriving their revenue from. And so it's an initiative that has been strike down for a little bit now. And then this last legislative session where no one was able to be present due to COVID, it got on the ballot. And so we are making the initiatives and providing information through Together Louisiana. And so once you become a block captain as well, you have access to this information in order to share it with other people. And so what I want to leave you with though is no on Amendment 5, and then some other information. So PAR is a really good organization for that too, but we're also going to be providing information for people to be informed. And as block captains, that's what you also will be able to do. And so I want to leave room for questions. And so I'm going to conclude now. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And then, oh, and Silas is here. Great. And so I want to give him time too to share. So I'm done.
How you doing?
Thank you for leaving. Hi, Dr. Lee. How are you?
Fine. How you doing? Sorry, just
Good, good. We agreed that since you were the last time, we were going to give you all the hard questions.
Oh yeah, I don't know about that. All right.
We're moving into the Q&A period, but I'd like to allow some time for you to introduce yourself and to offer any remarks you may have on the importance of voting, the importance of registering to vote, the importance, as Kalita said, of getting out to vote. And I'm just going to lead in with one of the questions that we're getting a lot is, how do we get more people of color, more Black people to register and to the polls? This is the question I think we've gotten like 10 times already, right? So that's a hard question, and you know all the answers.
No, I don't know. Well, you know, a couple of points, I think, Doctor. In reference to voting, we quite often think it's a once every 4-year activity, and civic engagement is continuous. It's a process whereby it's not just voting, but it's being involved, it's being aware, it's communicating with people in positions of authority, decision-making, and having some capacity that impact your community. And that could be anyone from an elected official to a bureaucrat. So we have to demystify this myth that civic engagement only pertains to voting. In fact, a major component of civic engagement takes place away from voting. That relates to making policies. That relates to influencing people. And I always remind individuals in reference to the process of voting, that is one aspect, but building an infrastructure in reference to civic engagement and political literacy. That's a key element, political literacy. Political literacy is understanding the process, what it can, what it cannot do, its limitations, and the fact that it's not something that occurs once every 4 years. It's something that is an ongoing activity. You don't see it. It's almost like gas that you use in your house. You don't smell it. You don't see it, but you can smell it. And you let it linger long enough, what happens? It blows up the place. So that's how civic engagement is. And part of civic engagement is defending your positions, defining what you're going to do, and most importantly, developing talent, developing an information infrastructure, developing an institutional infrastructure that will help you protect your interests. And when I say an institutional infrastructure, that means putting people in the right places that will be able to help you bring resources, protect your interests, expand your interests at critical points in time. And that's something that, again, we have to be very strategic at, because when you look at defining, developing, and defending, that's beyond personalities. That gives you longevity. And that is why institutions are able to survive over a period of decades and generations, because they have developed, defended, and created that infrastructure. That also means that they have created a resource to nurture, a financial resource to sustain themselves. And that's one of the biggest challenges we have, the financial resources to sustain institutions and people and to fight a hard fight. Because what we always notice is that one side will have the advantage in terms of money, and another side might have the advantage in terms of doing the right thing. Doing the right thing, not enough. And that's what in the 21st century, where it's a highly mobile society, it's multidimensional, it's multimodal. People don't see and hear the same thing. They have different interests. They also have different platforms. The politician is no longer the sole authority or the only person with a platform. So you have various influences, community influences, social influences, economic influences. So we have so many people distributing information, some true, some false, that it's hard for us to sustain that level of momentum unless we are strategic and aggressive about it. And that's something that we have to really be aware of. It's not just putting it out there, it's not just being seen, but you have to be strategic and aggressive about it, because what works with one group, what worked at one time, may not work a year or two later.
Wow. Dr. Lee, you came to teach this morning. All right. This is,
Right.
you know, we need to hear that, right? And if you all don't know, Dr. Lee is one of the most prolific pollsters ever in the city, state, country. So he knows this like the back of his hand. I'm going to toss this over to Reverend Stevens and Chloe, who's our student facilitator, to continue us with our Q&A period.
Okay.
Hello,
Thank you.
everyone.
Yeah.
Hello.
Our first question comes from Joyce Thomas, and this question was asked during Ms. Joy's presentation. Because of the large number of evacuees in New Orleans with no exact date of returning, what information is needed to assist them in voting, especially when their polling location may no longer be valid?
So I'll kick off, and there may be others who have information that would be helpful in fully responding to the question. But you must vote in the parish in which you reside. And what I would suggest is that any voter who is outside of their parish because they have had to evacuate as a result of storm conditions or otherwise should be in touch with that voter's registrar of voters, and also use those apps to assist in determining where is the polling place that will be assigned. I know that there are many people who are actively working on people who have evacuated being able to fully exercise their right to vote. And I can actually do some further research on this and see if I can get a more complete answer to the question that was posed, and I'm happy to do that.
I mean, I think the best way to do it is to vote by mail. And so if anyone's temporarily away from their residence or where their precinct is, for whatever reason, you definitely want to get an absentee ballot and to get your opportunity to vote by mail. If you even think that you won't be back into your parish for election day or for early voting, you definitely want to request your opportunity to vote by mail. That would be like a temporarily out of your jurisdiction in your parish area excuse. And so that's not even, yeah, definitely you want to vote by mail. And that's just really simply what you really want to do for sure. If you can get back to your parish, if that is possible, if your parish precinct exists, right, then you want to do that, but definitely voting by mail is going to be your best option. And so don't not vote because you're not located in your parish. Vote by mail, an absentee.
Could I make a point about the vote by mail? There's a lot of misinformation that is incorrect about it. And the best thing to do is, like you said, vote by mail, but make sure you send it in early due to the fact that the system is going to be overwhelmed, and have the correct postage. I think some people had 1 stamp instead of 2. They don't tell you you need 2 stamps on it, but put 2 just to be safe. Those with 1 stamp, many of them did not have their ballots counted because of insufficient postage. Again, that's something that needs to be clarified. But vote by mail is safe, and just be aware of the limitations of it. It is in its infancy, but it will grow. People want to do it. We still have to develop, the resources are there, just that people who oppose it have taken away the resources, the machinery, the personnel. So they're using all types of excuses and strategies to limit the effectiveness of it, but it is highly efficient. And you may have to ask your register of voters in some way just to inform you that your ballot was received and recorded, because we noticed in some research we did, a lot of people want that reassurance that their ballot, 1, was received, and 2, most importantly, their vote was recorded.
And let me just quickly piggyback on that, Dr. Lee. There is a way on the GoVote app, and I believe also on the Secretary of State's website, to track your absentee ballot and confirm that it was counted. I myself vote by mail, and I'll say as well that there are very detailed instructions about how to complete an absentee ballot. There are a couple of envelopes provided with flaps that need specific information, and you must put it in the sealed envelope and sign your flap, and you must have a witness to your signature. So there is a step-by-step set of instructions about completing your absentee ballot. For all of those who choose to vote by mail, please take the time to be very deliberate and intentional as you complete the ballot, and including the mailing phase of it, so that you have complied with all of the rules and regulations, and best ensure that your ballot is indeed counted. And in Orleans Parish, by the way, in addition to the mail-in option with 2 stamps, there are going to be drop-off sites available to people who are just not able to get comfortable with mailing their ballot and relying on the U.S. Postal Service, and also the timing of it all. So there are going to be drop-off hours and drop-off locations with staffing by the Registrar of Voters office, who will scan your ballot right in front of you so that you know it is being accepted and it will be processed. And assuming you've complied with all the rules about completing the ballot, that should ensure that it is counted.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. Our second question is it appropriate to put together a one-pager for evacuees and pass them out at the various hotels they are currently residing?
Of course, that's an organizing effort. And so whoever came up with that idea, you should organize around it. And so the spirit of the question, I feel, and I know this person, is, just kind of a suggestion of what to do. And we got to get to doing, y'all. We got to get to doing what we think is going to be helpful to get people out to vote this November and beyond. And so if you think it's going to be helpful, let's do it. And maybe you just can't do it by yourself. And so what does that look like to organize other people? And this is just kind of the vision of the precinct organizing project, is like, really, how can we think of the things that our neighbors need in order to get out to vote? So that your neighbor next door is going to need to vote by mail. Like, they have not come out. They are not excited about being able to go vote during COVID. And that this is something that they need in order to access. You would know that. And so what does it look like for you to sit through, make sure that they fill out their form correctly, and engage them in a way so that they can exercise their vote? And so all these different things that we're thinking of to help to get people out to the polls, we want to do, and we want to act on them with great zeal and enthusiasm, and so that it can catch on fire for us to be able to increase voter turnout and be able to keep whoever is elected in whatever election accountable to what our community and the needs and the policies that are going to help us advance as a state and ultimately as a nation. And so, I don't know. Anybody else?
There is another question with all of our student organizations. Many of them are doing voter registration drives at this time. And there's a question about, can an out-of-state student register in Louisiana without a Louisiana ID?
The answer is yes, but not online. So that student who is attending college in Orleans Parish has the option to register in the state of Louisiana without impacting in-state, out-of-state tuition or anything having to do with tax consequences for their parents. That option is 100% available, but they'll have to register using that paper ballot that we talked about earlier in the webinar. And as I said, I am happy to get to any students who need to have a paper ballot. I'm happy to facilitate that, providing some paper ballots to the university if that's determined to be the best way to do it, or directing them to how they can download the application themselves online, complete it. But again, they should be mindful that the clock is ticking on that. We are about to hit the deadline within the next week or so in order for that student to complete the registration process in Louisiana and be able to vote on Election Day.
All right, and I just wanted to say really quickly, if any of our attendees are current Zula students, You will have an opportunity to receive registration assistance for the next 3 weeks in our residence halls. We are working to provide that for you. We're just getting the information together, but by the end of the week, you will receive more information on how to get registered in our residence halls. We currently don't have any more questions in the Q&A box, but if you would like to type a couple more, feel free to do so at this time.
I'll fill in for you, Chloe. There's a list of questions that were developed by students with regards to voting. And one of those is, what happens if machines are down? Can I vote? How do I vote? There's a lot of concern around nefarious activity around voting machines in this election. And so there's a whole block of questions about what to do if the machines go down, if the poll location closes while I'm in line, can I still vote? What happens if my name is not on the list with the registrar of voters, right?
Was Arthur Morell invited to this?
We didn't invite Mr. Morell. We invited Dr. Wilson, who could not make it. Yeah.
Maybe it's because those are very good questions that come up every election cycle. Yeah. Short answer, yes, you still can vote, but they can give you all the technicalities in terms of that. I think it's a provisional ballot. I'm not sure, but definitely those are questions. And you can bet for some reason this cycle, there will be some problems with the machines and you will not be on the rolls, or your name may not match because simple thing could be someone got married and they went from Mary Smith to Mary Smith Johnson, and on the license it says Smith-Johnson, but on the rolls it says just Smith. That would disqualify her. So we have to check and make sure that all the information, especially name, address, matches up. But some of those technical questions, what happens if the machine is not working properly? What happens if I'm not on the roll? I think there's a provisional ballot that you can use. What happens if if there's a mistake, that they have the wrong information from me? Those are some critical questions. I think a Q&A sheet would be very helpful. And not just a Q&A sheet, but an electronic version of that you could post on Xavier's website would be helpful in terms of a resource that everybody could go to, students, faculty, staff, to know what are the rights.
So I can add to that on the govote.com website, as you pull up the front page, on the left-hand side of the screen as you're looking at it, there is a menu, and at the bottom of that menu is frequently asked questions. And if you click on the frequently asked questions, there is a drop-down menu that includes, for example, information about voting by mail, information about voting early, information about voting on election day, and information about voters' rights. What are your rights? What are your responsibilities?
Mm-hmm.
All in the drop-down menu, and also a drop-down menu about voting provisionally. So in other words, under what circumstances would you be voting using a provisional ballot? And it's all around whether there are questions concerning your eligibility. If you don't show up on the registrar of being registered to vote at that precinct, you first go to your the head commissioner at the location, who may be able to spot check quickly and say, oh, sorry, you are supposed to be here and not there. or be able to quickly troubleshoot through certain things like the wrong name or not having the proper identification. Voting provisionally is only for federal elections. That's a federal provision, but it involves a paper ballot that then gets sealed and then gets reviewed later in order to determine whether or not the voter is indeed eligible. And the results of that provisional ballot, in other words, whether or not it will be counted, will be determined at a later time. Also, I would say on the issue of the voting machines and whether any particular voter encounters something on election day that seems off or untoward, again, there are election protection folks standing by, ready to assist, rapid response. So please utilize those resources. No one should have their right to vote interfered with.
Thank you, Joy.
What I want to add to those questions when we talk about kind of voter suppression tactics and preventing people from being able to access the vote, this is why early voting is so crucial, particularly in an election with such intensity, if you will. And so what we want to encourage is that people vote early, that people are not waiting until November 3rd to go and cast their ballots. There's been precincts that have been changed. We've had a hurricane and people are evacuated elsewhere. And so we want to encourage people to vote early in order to minimize all of those concerns. So that's one. So that's one way to not even, and I'm gonna push back to Dr. Lee, in Jesus' name, we're not gonna have none of these problems. But to prevent that, right, to be proactive, vote early and just encourage people to vote early and cast your vote early as well. The second thing I would say is there will be people on deck to make sure that you are able to cast your vote. And so what I want to encourage people, no matter what the situation is, make sure you're able to cast your vote. And do not leave. Do not walk away with not being able to cast your vote. There's resources like Joy mentioned of election protection. It's a team of attorneys who are very versed in voter rights and are able to resolve issues very quickly when as they come up. And so Operation You Will Cast Your Vote, if you go and make sure that you vote, because there's resources and people who want to advocate for you to be able to do that. And so your responsibility is to make sure to go and do that and just allow people to support you as issues come up. And so, yeah, early vote.
Yes.
I'm dropping stuff in the
Thank
chat.
Thank you, Kalita. I think we probably have one more question. And that question really, Mitchell, Reverend Stevens, do you have a question there?
There's a segue to that, and I don't know if we have time for an answer. There was a question that was sent in. It's what is the difference between voter fraud and voter suppression?
Voter fraud and voter suppression?
Yes.
Fraud is where you have someone who is attempting to vote that is not that person on the rolls, basically. And it could be someone who's deceased. It could be someone who's a minor. So that is fraud. Voter suppression is where you suppress access to voting. And the access to voting could be the various tactics they're using. And there's so many tactics. Closing the early voting sites, making it more difficult to prove who you are in terms of what's being used for to prove your ID. So the list goes on in terms of voter suppression, various intimidation tactics, having individuals come up to you who might appear to be law enforcement, but they're nothing but private security guards, and question why you're voting and intimidate you. So that there's so many voter suppression tactics that are being used in place of the poll tax and everything else to stop individuals from voting. And the purpose of voting suppression is to psychologically diminish the level of enthusiasm, the level of confidence that people will have in voting. The reason that is important, in some studies, it was measured that for every one Democratic vote that you stop or suppress, that is equal to about 70 Republican votes. So it's important that we understand voter suppression is not just stopping you from voting, but it is suppressing the actual level of voting participation.
Wow.
And voter fraud, let me make another point. Voter fraud is a myth. It's a problem in search of a solution. It was interesting that you had people bring up the issue of fraud, and in one particular case, the person who brought up the issue of fraud, they're cheating, they're taking away the election, turned out to be a Republican in Michigan. And every time they talk about fraud, they cannot find the proof of it. Trump had this fraud commission to investigate voting. It had to be dismantled. They couldn't find it. It doesn't exist.
Wow. Khalid, you want to add to that quickly?
I think, so I always want to know the spirit of a question. And so it's like, you know, what was the spirit of that question? Did they think voting fraud exists? Have they been suppressed with their vote? But I think Dr. Lee hit it on the head. The other thing I would also say is if people don't express their issues with voting, like, so if something has happened to them in their ability to access the vote, we don't know about it. And so being able to voice that and express that in order to then galvanize around it to solve it is really important. But I think Dr. Lee hit it on the head of voter fraud is a myth for sure. And no one out here, we try to get people to vote. So no one's out here trying to perpetrate other people to vote. If anything, I think some other people would do things of that nature, but yeah, it's not that. We need you to be confident in being able to vote and know that the power of your vote is important, and not just the voting power, but what it means after that, right? So after elected officials are elected, what does it mean as a voter to then hold them accountable, right? And so I really like the title of this panel, Your Vote, Your Voice, Your Voice, Your Vote. And so, yeah.
And you bring up a good point in reference to your voice. Your voice really is heard after the election too, because it's a two-part process. Yes, you go to vote, but if you don't hold elected officials, one, accountable, make them aware that you are watching them, make them aware that you will be forcing them to do what they should do, then that did not completely fulfill the purpose and the spirit of voting. So voting and civic engagement, that going to vote is part of the activity, but the actual part in terms of what it means really takes place after the election. The accountability, the engagement, holding the elected officials not just accountable, but forcing them to do things. Otherwise, they get lazy. If you're not forcing elected officials to do something, guess who is? The lobbyists.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, I want to say something about that because I used to be mad about that. I used to be upset about, you know, why would you still do something not on toward the community? But I respect it now because just as much as lobbyists are organizing themselves, we get to organize ourselves around issues and things that matter to us, because that's what they're doing. They're organizing themselves around issues and things that matter to them. And so you're right, Dr. Lee, who gets to be in their face? We do, but only if we're organized, and it's so instrumental. It's so important for us to do so. And it doesn't take a lot of work either. It's not an extra job. It's really just a matter of being engaged around issues that are personal to you and affect others who are around you as well. And so, yeah.
And we say being engaged in today's society, thanks to technology, you don't always have to physically be there. Emails, politicians, elected officials, they read emails. And if you can generate an email, all it needs is someone to check or do an electronic signature. They read emails. Just think about when you think members of Congress, they always talk about they got X number of letters and so forth. It's not that people are sending letters. It simply means that someone has emailed the constituents a letter for them to put an X on or sign off on and email it to the congressperson. So technology has made it much more easier for us to engage. We don't have to physically be there. We can do it thanks to either emails or through Zoom or through other forms that do not require a physical presence, maybe a couple of seconds of our time.
Yeah.
And we saw that too, you know, when they renamed Jeff Davis Parkway, they asked people to sign a petition. No one was in the street with a pieces of paper asking you to sign anything. It was all electronic.
And what did it get renamed to?
Huh?
What did it get renamed to?
Oh, Dr. Norman C. Francis Parkway.
All right, now, all right.
There you go. There you go. And that is where we will end our conversation today. It's just getting good. I want to thank you, Joy, Khalida, and Dr. Lee for this informative presentation and this dialogue that really is just getting good, and we have to go. On the mechanics of registering to vote and the necessity of voting to have our individual and our collective voices heard. On this National Voters Registration Day, I hope that you will all remember the hard-fought right to vote for marginalized communities. And I hope that you will use what you've learned here today to vote in the election on November 3rd. We know every election is important and every vote matters, but this one seems even more so.
Mm-hmm.
Please allow me to thank our student Q&A facilitator, Chloe, and my co-moderator, Reverend Mitchell Stevens. I also must thank the behind-the-scenes crew, which is Yamlak, our IT guru at Xavier, and Karen Blair, program coordinator for the Center for Equity, Justice, and the Human Spirit. And let me thank each of you who have joined us this afternoon. I hope you will join us this evening for Your Vote, Your Voice 2020 New Futures for Black Lives and Beyond, where we will discuss the issues of concern and of importance to young adults and depressed communities and prepare ourselves to make the most informed decisions on Election Day. I'm going to remind you to stay tuned. I believe there's a brief survey once the Zoom goes off. But remember to register, remember to vote. Remember to register, remember to vote. Be well, be community, remember our shared humanity, be of good courage. Thank you and have a great day.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.